afternoon, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Coming on today, still got a lot of people that want to go to those courts. So we're going to talk about their courts. We're going to explain their courts through the Lieber Code, because it tells us in their Lieber Code the construction of their courts, which is based on jurisdictions. And all jurisdictions derive from the military, as I've explained before, from the law of nations, rules of warfare. And this is in construction with the Treaty of Berne, a peace treaty. And the thing about the courts is that when you go into any court, whether it be arbitration for contracts or criminal prosecution, it's a matter of coming to a peace agreement. And like I've said before, the peace agreement already exists. There are already standards and forms of conduct that they're supposed to be complying with. And this is the problem. People don't understand how the courts operate. And that means not just us at the lower level, but a lot of the people at the upper levels don't understand how these courts operate. They've been indoctrinated and induced into this system like many of us. 98% of taxes, our income taxes, are paid voluntarily. That means 98% of the population is indoctrinated. So let's think about this. So again, like I said, when we go to these courts, the courts themselves are just merely a matter of a process to come to a peace agreement. Same thing with private notices. It's just a process of coming to a peace agreement. And this we find in the definition of today's legal tender. Legal tender today is defined as negotiable instruments. Negotiable instruments, however, is a contract. That's what legal tender is. It's all contract. That's why it's called negotiable. And then they add on the second part of the qualifying part of the phrase, instruments. It's either a negotiation for peace or a negotiable instrument. Now, the negotiable instrument in the commercial realm for contracts is in regards to a matter of perpetuity to keep the contract alive. Okay, just like we want to remain alive in our life, and we don't want to believe in this thing called death, but it's forced upon us, and we accept it. Well, that's the same thing. We got to come to peace with ourselves and what life and death really means. When it comes to that, again, like I said, their courts are all military. It's an extension of either their courts under the rules of war, or your court, his court. The oath that you accepted from him in his house. That's his court. The land shall not be sold forever, for it is mine. And ye are strangers and sojourners with me. And in all of the lands of your possession ye shall grant a redemption. So how much power does the military have if you're going there to grant the redemption, and they're the ones that are the receivers of that redemption for operating in war? These are concepts I hope people are really thinking about as I put this information out. Because that's truly what it comes down to, is the war within yourself. The trust that you have with your higher power. Is it a trust with him, or do you fall to the fear that a military force has greater power than your higher source? So let's look at this. This is Article 13 of the Lieber Code, and it's very short and very sweet. And so, and again, I'll post this. I've posted the Lieber Code many times. It says, military jurisdiction is of two kinds. So let's take a look at that very first qualifying phrase in regards to Rule 2 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. Federal Rules of Civil Procedure says there is one form of action. So again, when we're talking about legal tender in those courts, which is what they're always seeking, whether it be a criminal penalty or a contract fine or cost or expense or tax or surcharge, that's what they're looking for, is a legal instrument, negotiable instrument. It's a contract form. That's one form. It's all contract. But that contract, like I've said many times before, has to be done in trust. Has to. So, now that we know two kinds of jurisdictions relevant to Federal Rules of Civil Procedure 2, where it says there's one form of action, but there's two kinds within that action. The first, that which is conferred. Conferred is synonymous with granted. First, that which is granted means this is the trust jurisdiction. This is the trust kind of jurisdiction, and defined by statute. So, we see that their statutes are a trust put out as an offer in the public domain for those who wish to contract in that trust or accept the beneficiary of that trust. Again, this is military jurisdiction is of two kinds. Ecclesiastical jurisdiction is of one kind, for there is but one Father which art in heaven, and that is hallowed be thy name. It cannot be name, it's hallowed. So while the two kinds of military jurisdiction are stated in Federal Rules of Civil Procedure for two different processes, two different kinds of processes, it's still a military. Okay? So it says, goes on, it says the second that which is derived from the common law of war. Common law of war is the contract itself. So, what they have is a public offering known as the Lieber Code, General Orders, Article 13. You can accept their military jurisdiction is of two kinds. In that acceptance, first that which is conferred. Okay, so again, if you're going to accept the military jurisdiction of two kinds, being double-minded, and then you've given up the singular mind of our Father which art in heaven, and you've subjected yourself to honoring a patriotic fatherland. Jeremiah 1 verse 5 very distinctly says we are sanctified and ordained prophets unto the nations. We're not supposed to be of the nation and profiting the nation's military jurisdictions, which are of two kinds, proving the insanity through 1 USC 1, wherein plural means singular and singular means plural. That scripture says come out of her. It means come out of those military courts, which are double-minded with two jurisdictions. And in those two jurisdictions, if you admit to either one, you admit to shedding the full armor of God and taking upon the uniform armor of a statutory person, and he cannot see you, for he is a respecter of no persons. So let's go on. That being the first sentence, there's a little bit more to go with. Military offenses under the statute law. So, if it's not a military offense under statute law, it's telling us that the statute is a military law. You guys see that? Military offenses under the statute law. Telling us that the statute law is listing the military offenses, and that's why they have penalties. It's a penal system. Must be tried in the manner therein directed, not ordered, as in general orders, but directed. Okay? But military offenses which do not come within the statute must be tried and punished under the common law of war contracts. So if they're not done under the military admiralty, then they're done under contracts through maritime. Common law of war is maritime. You're still in the war. Okay? The character of the courts. The character. Telling us that the courts are persons. The courts are fiction. The character of the courts, which exercise these jurisdictions, depends upon the local laws of each particular country. It's dependent upon the local laws of each particular country. This is where people have the problem with the constitutional law and policing authority, saying that the states have constitutional authority to set their statutory policing laws. No, they don't. No, they don't. Regardless of what constitution the state or the United States has incorporated or written or construed, drafted, put out, whatever, it is still subject to the Constitutional Universal Postal Union, drafted up indenturing the Treaty of Berne, where in the first article states freedom of transit throughout the entire territory of the Union. Freedom of transit is guaranteed throughout the entire territory of the Union. So even as a country, you're under the law of nations. Even as a state, insular state, one of the 50 states of the Union, you're under the law of nations, wherein freedom of transit is guaranteed throughout the entire territory of the Union. It's the Union, Universal Postal Union. That's the military arm. See, remember I told you the criteria for post office through the Marines is that every post office is an inland marine station. Under Article 1, Section 8, Clauses 1 and 17. 17 denoting the needful places and buildings established under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, congressional authority to lay and collect taxes, duties, and imposts. That office, that post office is an impost. The hospital is an impost. The library is an impost. The public schools are imposts. The stores, they're all imposts. They're inland naval stores. And it's for surplus marine items or surplus military items that they cannot store on ship. They have to store them on land, in buildings appurtenant to the land. So we have to think about this stuff and really pay attention to the verbiage. And so let's go on. In the armies of the United States. Okay. The armies of the United States. I don't care if it's the United States of the armies or the armies of the United States. Again, as I said, they follow the law of nations, the Constitution of the Universal Postal Union that indentures the Treaty of Berne. The first is exercised by courts martial. First, that which is conferred. So trust law is exercised by courts martial. That's the admiralty side. While cases which do not come within the rules and articles of war or the jurisdiction conferred by statute on courts martial are tried by military commissions. Contracts are paid by commissions. That automobile dealership hires sales reps and they get paid a commission because that automobile dealership is an impost and it is selling excess, surplus military vehicles known to be used for commercial practices of the military and civilian forces on a regular and common basis. So we see that these courts that they're talking about are of two jurisdictions fail to include or acknowledge the supplementary law up to this point. Watch. This is Article 13. Article 14, military necessity as understood by modern civilized nations consists in the necessity of those measures which are indispensable for securing the ends of the war and which are lawful according to the modern law and usages of war. It goes on to say in Article 15, military necessity admits of all direct destruction of life or limb of armed enemies and of other persons whose destruction is incidentally unavoidable in the armed contests of war. It allows of the capturing of every armed enemy. And therefore I say unto you, instead of picking up their commercial arms, raise up thy arms to him and give up thy arms. And let them know there is a higher, greater, supplemental authority that they do and will recognize in the rest of this. Because as we go on down to the bottom, it says, men who take up arms against one another in public war do not cease on this account to be moral beings responsible to one another and to God. Public war. This is why I urge everybody to get over the private war with inside of yourself, so you can see that truly the only ones at war are the publicans. Okay? Another thing I'd like to point out here, I got news that one of our brother's sisters was hauled off last night, separated from her baby girl. She's back home now, but there's still extenuating circumstances. This is something this gal is standing like a lion and has been doing so for years. Got people begging her to pay bills and stuff. And because she refuses to do that stuff, they pulled her over in her automobile trying to, gain sustenance for life. You cannot prevent people from going somewhere to get sustenance for life for her and her child and then separate them. It's a violation of international law. even if they claim that they're a civilian. These policy enforcers taking up arms in this public war have an accountability to be moral beings. And this is what they lack. They're operating merely in contract, forgetting all about the trust law, the first of the two jurisdictions. The first of the two jurisdictions that they admit to. Period. We really have to come to our senses about this stuff, because when it comes to it, this is why Article 10, martial law, oops, sorry about that. Martial law affects chiefly the police and the collection. So anytime we're dealing with police, we are talking about debt collection. Every time we talk about the police, their job is debt collection. It's called an enforcement of a debt that already exists. So their job isn't to investigate. It's to issue forth data elements so somebody else can collect on it. They are entering false information of public revenue and taxes. Martial law affects chiefly the police and collection of public revenue. Public war, which is a revenue of your venue of peace, bringing you into their war fraudulently. You're not part of their public war. Whether imposed by the expelled government or by the invader. Again, if they're the ones in dual-mindedness and they're subjecting you and not acknowledging your single-minded truth, they are the invader of that truth. And refers mainly to the support and efficiency of the Army, its safety, and the safety of its operations. In the armies of the United States is its operation. That birth registration conferred a nationality of a United States citizen in trust. And just like a trustee is not required to accept an assignment if they do not wish to, the beneficiary is not required to accept a gift. And the perfect logical reason for not accepting the gift of a nationality conferred upon you, noting a U.S. citizen, is that you are not competent to manage the accounting of a United States citizen. You cannot shed the full armor of God and put on the uniform of person at any time. For that would be discovering, as it's posed in their history books, that Columbus discovered America. It would pose that it was America first and that he uncovered it. So again, come out of her. Come out of the false uniform and put on the full armor of God. And pray in this manner. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And it dismisses every personal jurisdiction there is. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Name that person. If you can't name that person, then it is supplemental to your personal jurisdiction in every facet. Please take heed, people, and learn how to speak from your heart, because that is where the word of God is written with the right index, or the index finger of his right hand, and it is protected by the left hand of God. The word of truth written on your heart with the right hand, and the shield of faith is part of the full armor. Under the salvation, which is the helmet of salvation. And it's covered by the breastplate of truth, cinched with the belt, saying that you are bound to his oath as you travel in the boots of his gospel, ministering his word to every creature. Every creature. Anyway, I hope you guys understand this. Their courts are that of a double-mindedness in a military fashion. Come out of the military uniform. David in his fight against Goliath had all kinds of people trying to give him shields that he couldn't pick up because they were so large. Putting on the uniform of person of 800,000 some codes is too much of a uniform for me to be competent to carry. And I pose through reason and logic, it's actually too much of a uniform for any living being to actually carry. They can only do it as a presumption, and once they realize that the presumption is broken and how much of an idiot they were. I didn't find out how much of an idiot I was until I was about 50 years old. I just watched a video of a guy last night. He didn't realize it until he was almost 70 years old. But once we start realizing it, I started putting these videos out and doing this stuff on Facebook 6 years ago when I realized it. And when we realize it, and we realize our duty is that Jeremiah 1 verse 5, sanctified and ordained to be prophets unto the nations, and under that full armor, then we do go out in those boots of the ministry. And that's what it's about. Finding out that you do fill those boots. I can't fill the boots of the person. For even if I did all of the armor that it lays upon me, I wouldn't be able to stand. In order to properly stand, I have to be able to put on boots that fit my feet. The things that will adhere to my soles and make my heart comfortable as I walk through life. So please, come out of her, people. That dual-mindedness. Brother Dean, I'm glad you're here, brother. Our dual-mindedness, I watched it in you. And you're doing it. I love it, Dean. Great job. In the meantime, let's see what we got here. I'll read a few comments. Hey, Jules. Nice to see you watching. You don't get a chance to check my videos out live much. Tracy Spreck, Brian, hello, everybody. Les Brown, Mike, Jaguar, greetings. Terry. Anyway, like I said always before, make sure you start sharing the message. Make sure that it's the message of the Word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was God. Ye are gods, and He wrote the Word of God in your heart. Your heart is God, nothing else. Your mind is not the God. Your mind is only a simple, it's a transformer. Your mind is the transformer. It takes the energy from your heart, and it either induces it or it reduces it. Produces it, reduces it. It's an inducement of some sort. So beware of your observances and beware of what you put out. Make sure it's always observing in love so that you can put out that message of love. Again, this is one of those things why I appreciate you being on today, Dean. I went through the same thing. 93 cases going in there baffled, wondering why these people keep fucking me up. And it's because I was fucking my own self up. I had that internal duality, that internal conflict. I was at war with myself. Come to peace, brother. And don't ever I can't profess that it's going to be the end-all be-all. Because that's what life is trials and tribulations. As I come to peace with myself, it doesn't mean that I quit observing the wars. I still see all the wars. So the trials and tribulations are always going to be there. It's not a win. We're not here to win. We're here to do the best we can. So keep working at it, brothers and sisters. Again, keep sharing my message. Keep sharing the content. Keep sharing the links. Keep sharing the videos. Keep sharing through the PayPal link. I'll be posting that along with my other links. And of course, like I said, this is the part 2 of my Lieber code videos. I intend to do the rest of them with Zooms so that we can set up a particular time to do them, but I felt it pertinent to get this one out before I continued any further, because this is the whole problem, is the duality. And we have to realize, like I said again, all contracts are in fact an operation of a trust, and in operation of that trust having been written down, it's a false trust. I guarantee you, it's all done through military, and everything that's written down has to be done through a post. Taxes, duties, and imposts. Every communication is done through a library, a school, a medical facility, a post office, a court, whatever. They're all communications. And the only way we're supposed to be communicating is our actions speak louder than our words. So we speak to each other privately and keep our mouths shut in public. So when Matthew walked away from the tax collecting stand, when Jesus called his name, that's all Jesus did, is he called his name Matthew. He didn't call him Matthew of so-and-so, he just called him Matthew. And tax collectors being without recourse, getting paid per diem by the military officer stood right outside the door. And so without recourse is per diem. As soon as Matthew heard his name called and decided, making his choice that he was going to now follow Jesus, he did up the day's books according to that time. And on that day's books, he took out his percentum, stuck it in his little purse, and walked off. And there was nothing the military post officer could do about it, because he was without recourse. It was a per diem situation. He knew that Matthew was a civilian. He was under contract, a private contract. And these military forces are to protect civilians. They are not supposed to touch them. They're not supposed to touch the free inhabitants, showing that they are temples of God. Neither one of those kinds of people are these military forces supposed to touch. The only people that they're supposed to be dealing with, again, are those that are in contracts as trustees of that military force. These are all the, quote, fiduciaries, the ones that take the oaths, the false oaths, the ones that blaspheme God. So help me God. If you walk with God, then you don't need his help. You've already got it. Why are you wanting his help? Thou shalt not want. It's already there. What is done is what ought to be done. There is nothing new of the sun. Under the sun, you don't need to ask for his help. He's already given it to you. But it's only because you admittedly subject yourself to war that in that war you ask that if at any point in time that you're not listening to his word, which you've already done, by admitting that there's a possibility or need for you to go to war when it says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. We're not supposed to go to war. We're supposed to forgive each other for our warring actions. So with that, I yield. So again, I'm going to post that PayPal link. Please hit the share button. Hit the share button on all the links, all the videos and everything, and be watching for my Zooms on the Lieber code coming up soon. Meantime, God bless. If it weren't for you guys, I would not be doing this. Have a great day.